I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into The Locker Room's first Saturday Pick'em. Today we have one of my very special guests, my brother, not necessarily in blood, but definitely someone I've grown up with, loved to death, Mr. Seth Thornton. Seth, welcome onto The Locker Room. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, so this is a new segment that we have here at The Locker Room. Every Saturday, we're going to have more and more friends of mine and special guest pickers. We're going to go through a couple top games of the weekend, give you our predictions on who's going to win and why. And then we have, of course, our game of the weekend. At the end of this, for every guest that comes on, whoever gets the most right, we have a prize for that guest towards the end. So this is there's a lot of high stakes here, Seth. So I hope you've come ready to pick wisely.
Not worried about it.
So we are going to start straight off the bat. Game number one that we're going to go with, number 18, North Carolina versus the Syracuse Orange. Here's a couple things that I have to say about that. Syracuse is predicted to be the last team in their division. North Carolina is projected to be the third-place team battling for that second-place division. North Carolina has Sam Howell, its sophomore star quarterback, returning. Its recruiting is off the charts. This is a landslide for North Carolina, in my opinion, without a doubt. North Carolina by at least 21. I love what they're doing over there in North Carolina. The recruiting has been incredible. And they've been some kind of media darling, honestly, with the media this year. They are really high on what they're doing over there in North Carolina. So what say you? My first pick is North Carolina, number 18 in the country, well high and above Syracuse this Saturday.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on on North Carolina, but I will say Syracuse is a very scrappy team every single year. Even if they don't have the talent, they still show up to the games. I think that's attributed to their coaching. And so I do agree with you. North Carolina wins that game, but Syracuse could make it interesting if they show up to the game ready.
That's actually a very interesting point because I was almost about to say the same thing. My only issue with Syracuse is when it hits 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, that's where Syracuse really falls apart. They tend to make games interesting quarters 1 through 3, quarters 1 through 2.5. We saw them play Clemson not too long ago, and it was a good game for the first half. Syracuse this year they lost almost half of their entire team. I think it was 47% is gone, either due to the draft or graduation and just done in sports. With that factoring in for me, I see this as probably the worst Syracuse team that we've seen in a long time. I was very high on Syracuse a couple years ago. So I'm sorry to say Syracuse Orange, but I apologize for everything you're going to have to go through the football season.
Right.
Moving on to our second game of the weekend, we are going to go to number 23, Iowa State versus Louisiana. Now, this is a very interesting matchup for me. Louisiana has the second best postseason in their school's history in season last year. They had 11 wins. They led and beat the Miami of Ohio, which is where my beautiful wife goes to college, in their bowl game last year in the Lending Tree Bowl. I don't actually know what bowl that is, but apparently it's a bowl. So they beat Miami of Ohio in the Lending Tree Bowl. They have Levi Lewis in charge. He threw over 26 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions all of last season. He is returning, but not to be outdone by Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy will be leading the way for these Iowa State Cyclones. With the battle of the QBs, it's going to come down to, I honestly think, more of a home field advantage here for the Iowa State Cyclones here. So I have Iowa State in a very close game against Louisiana. I say Iowa State by 6. But this is a very close toss-up for me. Louisiana's returning 60% of its starters. It's got its star quarterback back that played at a very high level. But Brock Purdy has been known to throw the ball all over the field for these Iowa State Cyclones. So I'm going to go Iowa State here in a very close game, but I really like what Louisiana's doing.
Right. And I'm actually going to go complete opposite with Iowa State destroying Louisiana.
Wow, okay.
I think Iowa State's going to come out with a statement that they're ready to compete for the Big 10 or Big 12. I'm sorry.
I definitely see that happening too, because They were under 500 last year, which is not like the Iowa State Cyclones. That is not what they do. They are always them and Iowa are always very solid programs. So they did win their bowl game last year, but just something that you can tell that they need to come back with a vengeance this year. So I can definitely see a flip-flop either way. I like the quarterbacks on both sides. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game, more so probably in the 48 to 42 category. But I mean, if it's a blowout, hats off to Iowa State because they need to come out with a vengeance game from the beginning. And Louisiana's out to prove something. So this is a tough matchup, but I will check you down for Iowa State in a blowout here. Moving down, we've got Duke versus Notre Dame. Always a fun matchup when it's Duke versus Notre Dame. This is actually a very historic series. The first time they ever met was 1958, and they haven't met a whole lot of times since. Notre Dame, of course, is 4-2 in all-time series lead in this. Notre Dame, that indicates that Notre Dame's probably going to be the heavy favorite in this one going in. After a 4-2 start last season from Duke, though, they ended up losing 5 straight. They had a lot of promise to start off with, ended up losing 5 straight and missing the postseason for the first time since 2016. They now have David Cutcliffe. Their head coach is now calling plays. Offensive coordinator is gone. Dunzo, goodbye. Head coach is now going to be calling the offensive side of the ball. And this is a very interesting part for me. Clemson transfer Chase Bryce. He's a senior. He left Clemson. We only really saw him in the backup games after Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson were destroying the teams by 45. So we saw him. But, I mean, he had a very good season when he played, backup role. So I'm interested to see what he does at Duke leading off as the lead man. Is he going to start being successful, or was he only good because of garbage time in late games? So that's an interesting little nugget here. But Ian Book is back for these Fighting Irish, and we'll have arguably another great season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I fully expect Notre Dame Fighting Irish to not only blow it out, but they're definitely going to go to another bowl game, and they're going to really make it a tough year to try and get into that last playoff spot. Notre Dame's a very sneaky team this year. They're experienced. They're returning a lot of veterans here. So what say you? I have Notre Dame in a massive blowout against Duke.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as that quarterback from Duke, I don't see him doing anything this year. I definitely think Notre Dame's just going to walk away with this one, probably by the second quarter, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is probably a first half donezo. Backups are probably playing at the end of the third, the young freshmen or the red shirts that are coming in for the first couple games. Definitely agree here. I'm just interested to see what this Clemson quarterback does. He's actually had a lot of hype in the offseason, a lot of people saying that, he only was a backup because you had such talents like Deshaun Watson. He had him for a few years. And then, of course, now you have Trevor Lawrence, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft this coming up draft. So I'm interested to see, can he make a name for himself? Is it just, kind of one of those things where you're on a front-running team that you can throw front-running throws and stuff out there? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Moving down, we have a very interesting game actually as well. Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Georgia Tech has won actually the last 3 meetings between these teams, but Georgia Tech has also finally come into the 21st century. Georgia Tech is no longer running the triple option. They are running a spread offense for the first time in, I think it was 32 years, 33 years. So something incredible for that organization to start moving forward and take on a spread offense. They're back in modern times for once. But Marvin Wilson and Corey Durden are the 2 stud defensive linemen for the Florida State Seminoles. They are arguably going to be a first and second round picks. They are the best tandem right now, especially in the ACC for that defensive line with Clemson having so many graduates go to the NFL. I'm going to go Florida State here simply because Florida State has Blackman coming back at the quarterback position for the second straight year. So I think just the stability at quarterback really wins this matchup. Florida State is going to have the more experienced side of the football, even though Georgia Tech, the bright side for them is they're returning 7 defensive linemen from last year that are all experienced, and 2 of them won players of the year in their conference, and all their returning linebacking core except for 1. So defensive-wise, they're going to be stout, and they're going to be able to really stop this FSU run. But at the end of the day, they don't know who their quarterback's going to be. And when it comes down to that aspect, when you have an experienced quarterback like Blackman for the FSU Seminoles, I just don't see Georgia Tech really being able to take the reins because they don't know who's going to be at that quarterback position for them. So I got Florida State here in a very good game. I'm going to go 21-14 here. I say they only win by 7. Georgia Tech's defense is good for the first 3 quarters, but at the end of the day, they've got to make some throws.
Right. Yeah, see, if this was in years past where Georgia Tech was running the triple option, I would probably give this to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
However, they have not figured out the spread yet, in my opinion. And I think that's what's going to give Florida State the game, is the fact that Florida State is just playing another normal football team, and they're inexperienced in ways. So I think because of that, Florida State wins.
Definitely. Yeah, I read a really interesting quote this year. Georgia Tech was always found some slight sliver of success when they ran their triple option. You know, they always went to the lower bowl games. They always had pretty decent winning seasons. But I heard an interesting quote today, and it actually deals with the Houston Rockets as well, as being a novelty act isn't going to win you championships. So I applaud them for getting out of the system that they've been in basically since the beginning of Georgia Tech. Because the thing that the Houston Rockets are also going to have to do is they're going to have to ship out this small ball mentality in the NBA because it doesn't work. At the end of the day, it might win you some games. It might win you a playoff series. Just like Georgia Tech, it might win you a small bowl game, but you've got to get out of these little novelty acts. You got to get into the real world and do what everybody else is doing, and that's the spread offense. That being said, Georgia Tech's defense is going to be a great defense this year, but offensive-wise, they still need 3-4 years to really implement this system. As an Oregon fan, clearly, I remember when we first implemented the spread offense, it took us 2 to 3 seasons before we could start understanding it and gelling it and getting these younger guys to understand what we were doing. So people that go to Georgia Tech go there for a very specific reason, and now they're going to have a hard time with recruiting as well. Getting players that, you know, they're going to have to change their whole mindset. They can't go recruit the 7 running backs. You know, now they need 7 wide receivers and a couple backs that can catch out of the backfield. So I like what Georgia Tech's doing. It's just a very interesting year, especially with COVID, to see them switch it up so quick. So I appreciate the effort there, but Florida State's going to run away with this one towards the end. Next game, we have Missouri State versus Oklahoma, number 5 Oklahoma. Plain and simple, Spencer Rattler becomes the next Heisman candidate for these Oklahoma Sooners. It just is what it is. Oklahoma can produce quarterbacks. They produce Heisman Trophy winners, and they're going to dominate this game from start to finish. I don't even have anything down for Missouri State because it's not even fair. Oklahoma is just going to run away with this. I'm excited to see if there's a takeaway from this. I'm excited to see Spencer Rattler, and can he live up to the hype? We know we've seen him in the videos with the no-look passes. We've seen him in the videos with the deep 70-yard bombs, but is he the real deal? I'm interested to see what he does in this offense. I'm interested to see, is he another Heisman candidate like we've seen from Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray? So this is Oklahoma by a whole lot. What say you?
So, yeah, he's going to look like a Heisman candidate right off the bat. And the only reason that is because of the team they're playing. I was extremely excited when I heard that it was going to be all conference play for this season, because in my head, your 3 non-conference games just got taken away. And so most of the time, teams fill 2 of those 3 with practically Division II schools. And it's just the most boring thing to watch. Yeah. And somehow Oklahoma found a way to still play practically a Division II school. It doesn't even make sense. I don't know why they waste their time playing that. He's going to look incredible against them. And then the following week when they play an actual football team, he won't. I don't see him being a star this year. Maybe his junior year he shows up. I don't see it this year. I don't see Oklahoma winning the Big 12 this year. I actually think Oklahoma State could win the Big 12 this year. So I don't see Spencer Rattler dominating. Yeah,
see, I actually agree with you. I do not believe Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12 this year. There's too many good teams this year in that division. This is the first year that division's been this deep. They're 4 or 5 deep as to who can really take that division. So, yeah, definitely agree. I think Spencer Rattler is going to have his games against the lower conference, against the high school teams like Missouri State. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to take him a couple seasons in order to get that under his belt and to really have the confidence. He's definitely not the talent that Kyler Murray or that Baker Mayfield were starting off the bat. So he's definitely going to have to work his way up to that. But, of course, Oklahoma huge in game one against a high school team. Going on to the next game of the week, UTEP versus Texas. Plain and simple, Texas is fully expected to be competing for a Big 12 championship, like we just discussed how deep they are. Sam Ellinger will have all day to throw it in this game. Their offense and defensive line in Texas are outstanding this year. They're returning so many players on both sides of the ball. He's got good wide receivers. He's got good running backs. This is the year that Sam Ellinger has to elevate himself to a Heisman candidate. This is the year Sam Ellinger has to stop letting us say that he's good and go out and prove it for more than 2 and 3 games. Sam Ellinger is an incredible talent. I think he'll play in the NFL. I think he will have a decent career in the NFL. I'm not saying he'll be a starter, but he reminds me very much of Derek Carr if you watch the way he plays. Big arm, quick decision-making, but he tends to make those long bombs that just don't work in the moments you just don't need them. So he's got a lot of that Derek Carr feel for me. But I fully expect Texas to not only win this game, but I fully expect Texas to be in that Big 12 championship this year. I like what they have around them. I like the experience. I say Texas wins in a massive landslide. I say Sam Ellinger has a Heisman-like candidacy this year. What say you, my friend?
So I have Texas in the same scheme as Oklahoma, as we just talked about. I think Ellinger is going to dominate this game, look like a Heisman candidate, and then the remainder of the season, not impressed. I don't think Ellinger is anywhere near what is needed in the NFL, and I would be surprised if he's on a team in the NFL by the third week of the season. I don't see him doing anything in the NFL at all.
That's interesting. Well, and it's so interesting when you listen to the college football game day, especially like people like Kirk Herbstreit. They really praise Sam Ellinger. They say he's, they say he reminds them of the Derek Carrs, and that's the tale of two sides, because you have a love with Sam Ellinger. It's definitely a love and hate relationship with a lot of people. You either love him and think that he can go far, or you hate him and think, hey, there's no way this guy can do what everybody thinks he can. And so I tend to give everybody that opportunity and that chance to prove themselves. So I tend to fall on the side that thinks he can make the NFL. I don't know that he'll be a starting quarterback at all. To me, he reminds me of a backup that you would find. He reminds me of the Brian Hoyers of the world, someone that's going to get their shot. They might play 1 or 2 games because of injury, but he'll be sitting on a bench the rest of his career. But I just don't see much from Sam Ellinger besides that. But I think this is the year, if he can get into that Heisman conversation, this is going to be the only year that he can do that.
Right. It all goes back to the year they beat Georgia. First off, when he was playing Georgia in the bowl game, Georgia had just come off a loss in the SEC championship against Alabama, and they were competing on a level for a national title that season. And instead, they get rewarded by a bowl game against this Texas team, and they honestly did not show up. They had players sit that game, and their minds were just not in it. And so if you take that same Georgia team and that same Texas team, and they both teams, Georgia walks away from that game. So I don't believe in Ellinger at all.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, very interesting point, because like you said, when he said we're back after winning that game, that's when people really thought Ellinger was going to take off to the ceiling. We didn't see that last year. So I'm interested to see where he goes this year. Last but not least, we're going to go to the game of the weekend. Dun, 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 dun. Well, we had to do it. The very first weekend of college football, we have to go with the number 1 team, even though they're playing Wake Forest. Wake Forest versus number 1 Clemson. First and foremost, Wake Forest has been to 4 straight bowl games. They're looking to make it a 5th straight very clearly. They've had winning seasons the last 5 years. Only 2 starters returned on the offensive side of the ball, though. But on defense, they return all 7 of their starting front defense as well, and a couple of linebackers. Their defensive back core and their safety core is, the nicest way to put that is atrocious. Even though they will keep Etney, the running back, who's the all-time leading running back in Clemson history, even though they will keep him from running for 300 yards, Trevor Lawrence is just too much to handle in this one. I think this is the game that Trevor Lawrence shows up, shows out, proves that he is the number 1 pick overall. Even though he has a lot of young wide receivers and tight ends because so many of them went to the draft, I just fully expect Trevor Lawrence to be on full display in game 1. He's going to come out and prove that Clemson is in contention while he's at quarterback to be in that national championship game yet again. So I say Clemson in a scary landslide. I don't even think Lawrence plays in the fourth quarter. Clemson by at least 25.
Yeah, I agree. Clemson's going to walk away with this game. I don't even know if Lawrence will play much in the third quarter, for that matter. I think their backup quarterback, the freshman DJ, I think Clemson's extremely excited about him. And in game scenarios like this, when they can walk away from it easily, I think they're going to try and get him in there as much as possible for when Lawrence leaves at the end of this year, because I think DJ is going to be a serious quarterback in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Clemson's just – their recruiting is top-notch. They really are starting to get on – and I know people don't want to hear me say this, but they're starting to get on the Alabama type of level where they're recruiting, top 5 every year. They have great quarterbacks. They're kind of the opposite. They tend to get great wide receivers over great running backs like Alabama does. That they restock with a new Derrick Henry, just a different size every year. But Clemson's starting to get on that level of Alabama and Ohio State, where the recruiting is just insane every year. What Dabo Swinney is doing out there is pretty remarkable. I'm excited to see what their future is. But Clemson, they are right now my slight favorite to win it all this year. If there's ever going to be a bang that Trevor Lawrence is going to go out on, I think this might be the year to do it. But it's going to be, who knows? There's the Big Ten might be coming back. The Pac-12 might be coming back, as we know. So we don't know who else is going to be in contention. Or what other teams Clemson might have to battle schedule-wise in order to get to that national championship. So it's going to be an interesting road here in 2020. But there you have it. Those are our Saturday pick'ems. Remember, you can play at home every Saturday morning. Pick along with us. The winner at the end of the year, the winner at the end of my pick'em with all my friends. We will have a prize for the winner, a nice little trophy. Mr. Seth Thornton, we appreciate you coming on. Really is a pleasure. Love you, brother. I'm sure we'll be getting on Xbox at some point at the end of the night tonight after watching college football. But excited for NFL this weekend. Excited for our very first episode of Saturday Pick'em. We will have a bunch more guests on. We are going to have Jacob and friends basically every Saturday. So I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy your college football. Have a great day. We here at the Locker Room thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning Pick'em. If you'd like to know how to play along at home, it is simple. You will now see a slide with all of my social media. Follow me on Instagram every Saturday morning, and you can vote. At the end of the college football season, I will pick a winner for a cash prize for whoever gets the most right answers. So make sure you follow my social media. That is the only way to lock in your answer. You must follow, and then join along and play.